Should we call NBA expensive agency? There is nothing free about these guys. Are all signing big tickets. And the first day of free agency full of action. The big players were on South Beach. Miami Heat working towards completing a sign and trade, bringing Kyle Lowry from the Raptors. 2019 champion expect to snag a 3-year deal. Then the Heat turned towards one of their own, working on a max extension with Jimmy Butler. Have to have him in the fold. The 31-year-old led the Heat to the 2020 NBA Finals, posted career highs last season in field goal percentage, assists, and led the NBA in steals. And also the Heat took care of sharpshooter Duncan Robinson, agreeing to a 5-year, $90 million deal. Get this, that's the largest ticket by any undrafted player in league history. Robinson joined Steph Curry. Robinson joining Steph Curry and Klay Thompson as the only players with multiple seasons of 250 made threes while shooting over 40%. And then the late word, Tim Bontemps is confirming P.J. Tucker signs a 2-year, like $15 million deal. So you look at how the Heat project for next season. Let's just say they project really well. Wow. A star-studded lineup they can throw out on the court now. NBA front office insider Bobby Marks joining us now. And Pat Riley had himself a day, huh?
Man, you got to bring out the big calculator for this.
Wow. and we have something along those lines here. But what a day for Riley and the Heat. And, maybe completely transforming their roster now. Obviously, took care of some of their own. But you tell me, where do you want to start here? And how much better are the Heat today than they were yesterday?
Yeah, well, I'll start with it. They're a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference. I'm putting them up there with Brooklyn. I'm putting them up with Milwaukee, ahead of Philadelphia. I think these moves solidify that, especially with Kyle Lowry. I think the gymnastics as far as how they were able to do everything, it started yesterday with Goran Dragic exercising his $19.4 million option. That allowed them to stay over the salary cap. They didn't go under the cap. They could have signed Lowry outright if they wanted to. They didn't do that. And when you take a player out like, Dragic and probably Precious Achiuwa, and then you add Kyle, into that mix, his number is going to be a little bit higher than that 25, right around 27. That keeps you in the game here. What they were able to do, though, is Duncan Robinson. You had his bird right, so now you can exceed the salary cap to bring him back right around $16 million, and you keep on adding, and they'll be able to stay under the luxury tax, under the hard cap. When you look at here, they're under, and then you look at a player like, we'll see where P.J. Tucker is down here. I think we might even have him in the 4s. Yeah, we got him in the 4s. And then you had P.J. Tucker, because what happened is that you still had here's PJ, you still had your mid-level exception. So you had your $9.5 million mid-level exception. PJ gets about $7 million of that. And then when you slide him in there, you're still under the luxury tax. And
How's that possible?
And you can fill out the rest of your roster with minimum guys. You're probably going to lose Kendrick Nunn, who's a restricted free agent. But, yeah, you basically have turned over your roster, 2 years after they made the Jimmy Butler deal, something into nothing, and now this is a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, that is amazing how quickly you can transform. It's also amazing how you can go the other way. Toronto was 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
The Raptors were unrecognizable now from that championship club. What happens if I tap on this Kyle Lowry? Like the whole thing explodes?
No, not yet.
All right. But how quickly it can change in the NBA, right?
It can turn quickly, and they were able to. Hey, you get swept by Milwaukee last year in the first round. Like, change is coming here.
So obviously, look like the Phoenix Suns, off their NBA Finals appearance. They're right there in the mix. You feel good about that. I'd be curious, what they would look like without Chris Paul, but that's a nightmare that they don't have to worry about anymore. But Paul is back in the fold. What's that mean for them?
Yeah, when he opted out of that $44 million contract, the likelihood, someone asked me, what's the percentage? And I said 99.9.
Right.
When you don't leave $44 million on the table to go kind of test free agency, and Paul comes back on a 4-year deal, $120 million. He added length to that. What he was able to do is drop that $44 million number down to around 30. You can go out and re-sign Cameron Payne, who's a free agent, and still go under the luxury tax. Now the priority is your rookie extensions. DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges. those are contracts for next year, but you can extend them now. But priority one was getting Chris Paul in the fold, and they accomplished that.
Bobby, I'm looking around the league today, and I'm seeing, my eyeballs are blowing out with these incredible numbers for guys who are good players or bench players, but just incredible dollars being thrown around the league.
There were three players, Devontae Graham, $47 million, Norman Powell, $90 million, and then, as you said, Duncan Robinson, $90 million. Two players were drafted in the second round. Robinson went undrafted. Life-changing money.
And none of those guys you mentioned are household names. Look, you pay the big stars, I get it, but the amount of dollars being thrown out there, as you see some of the free agent re-signings. Larry Bird rights. I wonder how many kids know what the Larry Bird rights are, right? Probably not too many. We don't have the time to begin into that. But I think the bottom line here is you have the Miami Heat in the top three now in the East based on today's event.
I do, and we'll see with Brooklyn. Brooklyn's got some work to do. When you lose Jeff Green to go to Denver, in a free agent signing, they brought back Blake Griffin. We'll see what happens with Bruce Brown. Spencer Dinwiddie's still out there. A name, right. Can they bring him back, maybe use him in a sign trade? But the teams up top, Milwaukee loses P.J. Tucker.
Big piece for them.
Yep.
It's a good time of the NBA, the good part of the offseason, the NBA. Bobby, thanks.
Well, back to our breaking news here as NBA free agency is underway. Kyle Lowry's agreed to a 3-year deal, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, and will be a part of a sign and trade to the Heat, as the Raptors are expected to get Goran Dragic, a move that fits with the contracts. Also, we've got news coming in that Duncan Robinson has agreed to a 5-year, $90 million contract to stay in Miami, and according to Woj, it's the largest deal for an undrafted player. Also, Woj is reporting just in, All-Star guard Chris Paul has agreed to stay on a new 4-year, $120 million deal to stay in Phoenix. That's not a surprise as he opted out of the $44 million this upcoming season.
All about length on his contract.
Yes.
Opt out and add 3 more years on.
And these are guaranteed dollars that we're talking about in the NBA.
It's good to be Chris Paul and Duncan Robinson right now.
Yes, it is. And Bobby Marks joins us now with what you're hearing now with the Heat as they kind of keep the guys, the Jimmy Butlers and the Duncan Robinsons long-term, and then bring in Kyle Lowry. How does this work in your mind and when you look at the numbers?
Yeah, this is kind of what we thought it was going to be when they acted as a team that was going to go over the salary cap with the Goran Dragic option yesterday. And when you look at it, here's what this is it, right? Yep. Lowry, the Robinson number is going to be a little bit maybe higher than that $16 million. They're over the cap as we thought. The question is going to be, they're not even in the luxury tax. Mm-hmm. So they still have that $9.5 million mid-level exception to go out and use a player. And they just signed or talking with Jimmy Butler on an extension. So this is what we talked about, over the cap. They get Kyle Lowry now. They bring back Duncan Robinson. Now what do you do with that $9.5 million mid-level exception?
That cap right now is at $112 million, right?
$112 million, yeah. That's the thing to keep an eye on because it only increased 3%. So very small.
And then the luxury tax we get in the $136 million.
And the hard cap's $143. So that, with the Lowry trade, they are hard capped now. Yep. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that 143 number, not to exceed that. Okay, in the last hour, we're also talking about the future of DeMar DeRozan. The Bulls have been very active, agreeing to a sign and trade, bringing in Lonzo Ball, 4 years, $85 million, reported by Adrian Wojnarowski. Now, Brian Windhorst is reporting potentially the Spurs moving DeRozan and another sign and trade to Chicago. How does that work? Yeah, we've got a lot of moving parts here, and I think when you look at a team like the Bulls, right? We'll pull them up there. This is kind of where their roster is, and when we look at, we're going to put Lonzo into that mix, right at that $20 million. Might be a little bit higher. Yep. Right. So we're going to take him and we're going to take out Tomas Satoransky. We'll pull him out. All right, they're acting as a team over the salary cap. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now you're looking at a player like DeMar DeRozan, then his number was probably in that $20 million number. So how do you get within 125%? You have Thaddeus Young, you have Al-Farouq Aminu. The one guy to keep an eye on, Lauri Markkanen. They have his bird rights. He's a restricted free agent. Can you do a sign and trade with potentially Markkanen, maybe even a guy like Aminu? And then that brings DeMar DeRozan to Chicago. And we talked about the last segment with Zach LaVine. Yeah. Renegotiation. If you can get Lonzo Ball and DeMar DeRozan, I think Zach LaVine's going to wait another year to sign that big.
Changes his
It
viewpoint,
changes
right?
everything because you've improved the roster without using cap space on himself.
And back to the original conversation about the cap only going up 3%. That could change in the next year, and then you have more flexibility.
It actually, the projection for next year is 119, which is a nice little bit of a. It's not great, but it's still a $6 million boost compared to $3 million this previous year.
Also updating our big story here. Chris Paul agreeing to a 4-year, $120 million contract, according to Woj. So he's off the board. Mike Conley agreeing to an extension.
They're
3
coming
years,
off. It's coming quick.
$72 million. He's off the board.
These two players are the next to keep an eye on. Dennis Schroeder, Spencer Dinwiddie. We knew that once Larry came off the board, the point guards kind of start to fall into place here.
So we're talking about the top 3 point guards already off the board.
All
Chris
off the
Paul,
board.
Mike Conley, and Lonzo Ball. We will see how this plays out with Schroeder and Dinwiddie.
We haven't even hit 7 o'clock yet, I don't think.
It's been fun. Bobby, thank you so much. Tony?
We're almost there, guys. Almost there. Actually, we are getting you all